Welcome to the Podioslave podcast. This is episode 118. I am here, as always, with just Nate. It's just me and Nate tonight, guys. Nate, how you doing?
Just me. Yeah, we're a two-piece tonight. Going to record and geek out old school style, right? We're talking about a bunch of stuff kind of like back in the day, set lists. We haven't done that in a really long time, I feel like.
Yeah, true. It's funny because Nate and I were the original idea for the podcast was Nate and I forever ago. Like what, 12 years ago? We joked about this all the time, right?
I was going to say, was it on Instant Messenger? It was a long time ago, man.
It was a long time ago, yeah. So obviously we brought Twan to the mix. Twan is obviously much missed tonight. We want him here tonight. We get some stuff. He's got some stuff that he's got to handle at home. So we figured we'd rock a shorty without him at least. And yeah, he'll be back. We're just Nate and I are gonna do what we probably would have done not as well without Twan. Exactly. 10 years ago.
No, I'm happy you said that because Twan's a big part of this. I mean, he elevates what we do. Our idea was chicken scratch on the back of our seat, and Twan's got it on a spreadsheet. So, I mean, It's night and day. Yeah,
Twan's expertise and get it doneness is going to be sorely missed tonight. But we'll soldier on because the Podioslave podcast always puts an episode out, and we want to make sure we have something for people to listen to. And Twan, if you're listening right now, we miss you, bro, but we know you'll be back next week, and we'll get back at it and do a little more of the nerding out that we always do. But we're going to do a set list, right, Nate? We haven't done a set list in forever.
I know. When you mentioned the set list, I'm like, hey, I mean, it's been a long time, and we got to, we don't want to be that band or that podcast that strays away from our roots. So, no, yeah, let's do some set lists, some current events. So, first, we're going to thank Jonah for coming on last week because that was an awesome conversation. We recorded that like almost a month ago now, and it was fun listening back to it. It was also, there was some pretty heavy stuff in there. I mean, talking about Chester and Chris Cornell, and it was a very awesome conversation from front to back. I feel like Jonah is that guy, and he wears his heart on his sleeve, and you could tell in the moment, and it was all real. There was nothing fake about any of that. He's a guy with just emotions and loves to put them out there, and we'll talk to anybody about it. Yeah, no, exactly. In fact, I made a story on our Instagram, which was a conversation about love, life, music, and more, because he really embodied, more than just his body of work. It was just a widespread, canvas of different stories and, side tangents based on those stories. And the Chester thing's an interesting piece because it really was the first time I heard One Line Drawing was on, I want to admit it was on Napster, through a song that Chester had mentioned in an interview in a magazine. And it really kind of put the interview on hold, but I think for good reason. I think it's good to highlight that issue. And I think we did the best we could to take pause and highlight that in the best way we could. So yeah, it's never an easy thing to talk about, suicide. And, if anybody has an issue or is feeling down, they should definitely hit up that national suicide line that we posted in there too. So, yep. Jonah, awesome conversation. That Tender Wild record is going to be badass with all those features. We posted about it a couple days last week, with Chris Carrabba of Dashboard and Zach Lind of Jimmy Eat World and Norman from Texas is a Reason. We hit them all up talking to Jonah about it too. And it's going to be a great record. I'm already sure it's going to, flirt with my top 5, maybe top 3 of the year. Oh, 100%. And it's funny you mentioned all those special guests because if anyone's listening that doesn't know Jonah's body of work or his solo stuff, he's such a huge part of those bands that followed. Those special guests, like the music very much emulates his style and his whole writing ethos. Like it all happened because of him. He's very much a pioneer in the industry. So I don't think he gets enough respect in the industry, and I hope that he does at some point because Deftones are basically Jonah on steroids, Mm-hmm. So he's a very important part of the music business, I feel like. Yeah, he's a Swiss Army knife. We said it last week. Yeah. He fits in. There's tools everywhere. He can, carve out a space wherever he decides to do it. And that's because he's talented as hell and, has emotions and puts them into songs and makes them into reality. So we're excited. We're super happy to talk to him. He was on our list of people we wanted to talk to when we started this thing 2+ years ago, and finally be able to do it last week was badass. Yeah, very much if you build it, they will come type moment. I feel like it'll happen. Just patience is a virtue kind of thing.
Totally. All right. Another thing that slid across our desk this week was Corey Taylor saying that they're like, within the month, we're going to get new Slipknot. That's pretty exciting stuff, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I'm boggled, right? Because the band used to be on a somewhat decent cadence every 3 to 4 years. But now we're looking at what seems like bi-yearly at this point. There's something new from Slipknot. It seems like he's always mentioning new music. And I have to think that it has to be related to the pandemic and just copious amounts of writing sessions between Corey and the band. So maybe it's all one session, maybe it's not. You know, a lot of bands say that it's not. But either way, they're definitely in a creative spot, which is really cool.
Yeah, I'm excited for anything new from those guys. I really loved We Are Not Your Kind, which came out in 2019. I want to say August of 2019.
Yep.
And that's a banger of an album from them. And that was pre all the pandemic stuff and the angst and the anger that came from being stuck inside. I think those guys will handle that well and give us something, just as good as we got 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago now. I'm excited. I will dig right into that as soon as we get it. It'll be dope. Corey's been busy anyway. I mean, he put the CMFT stuff out. He put out a B-sides acoustic thing not that long ago too. That's pretty good. And he's just a busy cat. He's always doing stuff. But to hear that the 9 is back getting ready to launch off some new music, I can't wait.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's two things that come to mind. I wonder, firstly, if they're kind of putting things out in this somewhat fast rotation because there's only so much life left in the band to do what they do, especially live, right? But secondly, I allude back to the pandemic and just having the opportunity to really hone in songs to the best of the best, and maybe they had 80 songs and brought it down to 3 records. But at the same time, Corey's a really creative guy, so he might literally be writing on the road, or the band's throwing ideas around and they're like, hey, this is enough for another record, and we're on the road, so we can put this out and do another touring cycle into 2024 or something like that.
Yeah, that they could totally be sitting on more stuff than we think, which would be pretty exciting for us Slipknot fans and us Corey Taylor fans out there. We definitely ready. I'll speak for Twan here too. I'm sure he's ready for new Slipknot. Like, why not? Let's do it.
Let's do it. I mean, it's like, for our age group, Slipknot is the creme of the creme. Like, there's no other metal band that came out of our scene that is getting closer to Metallica status than Slipknot, and for good reason. So we champion them, obviously, for that reason, but also because we lived their music from inception to present. And so for us, it's something to be proud of.
I know a band that we saw come up. We talked to way back on episode 104. We talked to Scott Alderman about them playing Tattoo the Earth, which, stay tuned on that front. You never know. We might have some more up our sleeve about that. Yep. But yeah, those guys, they're ours, right? They're from we grew up with them. They, hit the scene when we were in high school. So to have them still be kicking today and crushing it is pretty awesome. And I'm super stoked for what's next. All right, so I was scrolling Twitter today and saw Rolling Stone had some top 100 or whatever hip-hop albums of all time. And we're not here to knock anybody else's music, because music is subjective. We love all music. But there are a couple things that we noticed that we're like, damn, that doesn't seem correct to us. Most notably, Cardi B and her album Invasion of Privacy, which is 4 years old, came out in 2018, was ranked number 16, and that's awesome. We're happy that she was up so high. But the albums that she was ahead of, I'm a little concerned and I'm a little confused by it. What am I talking about? Nas's Illmatic at 24.
Yep.
And Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt at 26. How those aren't both top 10 hip-hop albums? What are we doing here?
Yeah, like you said, it's subjective, so it's, it is what it is. But it's Rolling Stone, so they're making this list as of like almost like a group consensus. Like, we all agree here, right? Like, this is right. Better than Nas. Like, this is better than Jay-Z. Classic bona fide hip hop staples of not only the era, but really for the legacy of the genre. So it's a big statement, and I think if there's anything we've learned doing this podcast is talking to industry people and to really get behind the curtain and realize, like, okay, like, this isn't actually real data. This is pay to play. This is payola. This is
clickbait, maybe in this case.
Clickbait. Yeah. I mean, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. But for us as true music nerds, it kind of stings a little bit. And like you said, it's not a knock on Carly B. It's really just, is it though? Like, you know,
Right.
like,
And she's talented. Don't get me wrong. I don't dislike Cardi B's music. I just, I'm not sure her record that's only 4 years old and hasn't been lived in the same way that, say, Reasonable Doubt or Illmatic has, is warranted to be above those two. And there's other ones on there that she's probably better than, that were even higher up than she was, but because she's talented. Don't get me wrong. She can rap, man. She puts out banger pop rap songs for sure that are a little, you know, sometimes they're a little dirty. You talk about WAP, but I just, Illmatic and Reasonable Doubt are, like, those are top 5, right?
Exactly. And that fact, you just brought up a good point, which is worth mentioning, that, you know, those albums have been around, so they've kind of held the test of time. It's like an old wallet. Like, it still works. It's still the best of the best. Cardi B, this album's only from 2018. So, like, to put it at number 16, has it really even had enough life to earn a spot in that high regard? I feel like maybe, you know, put out this list in another 10, 15 years and we can revisit this, but to overcome and take the crown over artists like Nas and Jay-Z is a big statement. So I don't know. It's a point of high contention.
I'm looking through. It's the top 200. I'm looking through some of the other ones they have. And 50 Cent, number 64, Get Rich or Die Trying. Number 64, that feels about right.
Yeah. Should be higher.
Yeah, probably a little bit. Black Star, the first Black Star record, number 63. Okay. This is where I start to get a little upset. Kanye West, The College Dropout. Where do you think that is, Nate, in the top 200?
College Dropout. 22?
No, 52.
Oh my God.
Like, what are we doing here?
Oh my God.
Eminem, the Slim Shady LP. Give me a guess on that one. I'll give you an over-under. You tell me. Over-under 78.
Under.
No, 85, bro.
What?
Yeah. So this I think this was put out to piss off the rap fanboys and rap rap Twitter and all that fun stuff. Oh man. And I mean, hey, it worked. We're talking about it.
It did. I guess it did work. But I just wonder, like, how are they coming to these conclusions? Are they running polls? Are they just looking at Google Analytics on what's trending and say, hey, we'll move that up 20, 50 spots because it just happens to be, you know, some people are talking about it, which is not real data, right? It's like, that doesn't make it a better album just because people are talking about it. Now, True. Over something like Nas, that's... anyone will say, anyone, even her, I would imagine, would say, hey, he's one of the best in the game. In fact, he's one of my influences. But for her album, or anyone's album before that, is really a tough sell. In fact, now that you have it up, do you have the 1 through 15? I'm curious. I'm
trying to find the overall list, but I'm just kind of, hip hop Twitter is not happy about this. So it's been fun to kind of scroll through that.
Oh, it's not just us.
No, it's not just us, because like Yeezus is 17, which people are mad that Yeezus is below. But I think it looks like Biggie's Ready to Die was number 1, which a great record. I'm not sure it's number 1, but I mean this is where it's like, okay, am I mad about that? No, I'm not mad about that. I wouldn't have been mad about any Biggie or Tupac or Dre record hitting, you know, a top spot. That would have made sense to me.
Yeah, that actually goes to show that the 90s OGs always take the top 5 spots. Like the 80s is just forgotten, unfortunately.
Well, and as you always say, Nate, you love the 90s. You're a 90s OG yourself, and it continues to get validated today. So
in the music industry, especially, it was just such a golden era at least for hip hop, and I want to say rock, but obviously there's the Zeppelin and Beatles of the world that cannot overcome anything out of the 90s. But for hip hop, I think many would agree that the 90s was kind of a pure spot for that art form. I think it had to lead up to that spot for it to land where it did. And it also like was a kind of a lawless era where you could talk about gangster rap and it actually being realist, you know, true life, which is fucked up.
Yeah, sadly. Yeah.
Yeah.
We lost some great rappers because of it. But yeah, it's an interesting if you want to, you know, kill 20 minutes after you're done listening to us today, go just scroll through hip hop Twitter and see how upset they are about this list. And it's not just the Cardi B thing; it's about all different likes of bands and artists being in spots they don't necessarily deserve, or people don't think they deserve. And that's the beauty of music too. Like, you can do that though. Like, they're just putting something out there. They're trying to get people to look at it, and it worked. It absolutely worked.
Are we catching on? Maybe we should just completely go beyond our inclination and just put up a bunch of bullshit and get some crazy good ratings.
I know. Maybe that's the play going forward. The main segment tonight is Nate and Tony just giving you complete bullshit just to piss you off, so that you click on the episode.
Justin Bieber's better than Nirvana.
Oh man, yep. Pearl Jam, overrated? I mean, Deftones, not that good. Sorry.
Rage Against the Machine.
Exactly.
A rip-off band?
What machine are they raging against? They make so much money. You've unlocked the secret to more spins, Nate. I love it.
Oh man, anything to sell records, anything to get that 0.25 cents over for 7 years, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so go check that out. That was fun. That was a fun hang for us. All right, so now we're going to get into the main segment, which Nate and I kind of came up with sort of on the fly, but it's some stuff that we've thought about in the past and talked about, but now we're going to just kind of do it. We're going to run it. We're thinking tonight we're going to come up with bands or artists that we think will be a good candidate for a biopic, whether it be right now or down the road, because we've seen a bunch of those in recent years. The Elton John one, Rocket Man, the Freddie Mercury one with Rami Malek, that was really good. And they've done, they did the NWA one a couple years ago. Like, music is rife with stories that could be turned into these biopic movies for entertainment's sake. That not a documentary, like a full-on people playing the parts and then turning it into a legitimate movie. We have a couple ideas of how this might happen. So that being said, I'm going to give you my first one, Nate.
Nice. All right, let's go.
I would love a Nas biopic.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we were just talking hip hop, right? Nas would be his come up, growing up in Queensbridge, the life that he lived there, how he first figured out that he could, use words the way that he does, the people that he was around. Did he learn it from anybody? Did he just figure it out in his kitchen? Like, how did that come about? I know he's rapped about some of this stuff, but I want to see this, like, played out by somebody talented as an actor that could kind of pull the Nas stuff off. I don't know who would play him, but I think it would be a badass story. What do you think?
I was going to say that should be part of it too, is who's going to play it. And it'd probably be multiple if you're going to kind of do it in chronological order from child to present,
Right, yeah.
But man, great choice. Obviously, I think we all, actually, he's a house hip hop artist on this podcast, right?
He is, yep, agreed.
We all hold him in high regard for good reason. He's definitely one of the best, without a doubt. Still my favorite. Every once in a while I think about it, like, is he my favorite? But like, it always comes to him. No, it's a great one because his music is very firsthand. It's very, coming from the heart, from his lens, from Queensbridge, right from the, first record, he really paints the picture beautifully. And I think we can all, relate to that just based through his music, not relate with it, being there in New York City, but he really paints the picture. Like, you really see it, you smell it. I used to visit New York City a lot as a kid, so I remember its transition from the early 90s to at least 2007 when I lived there. It really went through a renaissance, especially Manhattan. So, but his words and his storytelling ability is just conducive to a movie to tell his story. And I feel like he was in that scene of hip hop that was just so huge, but he still was kind of left of center in a lot of ways. Like, he was mainstream, but like, he wasn't at the same time. I don't know how you even accomplish that. So, yeah, man, this is a really good one. And I know we mentioned it earlier, but who would play him young and who would play him middle and who would play him now? And it's a hard one.
That'd be tough. I'm not good enough with actors for that. I mean, most of our time is spent nerding on music.
Yeah.
The other piece of this that would be cool is we'd probably get somebody playing Jay-Z, because when they had their beef.
Oh yeah.
So we'd get more than just Nas, because he was around a bunch of other artists, and
that's true.
It would be pretty dope to kind of have this story told as a movie. I was actually just, in prepping for this, searched to see if there was maybe something in the works already, and there isn't. And he did get quoted back in November of 2020 to say it's too early. He's not old enough. He's got more story to tell, which I love that too. I mean,
wow.
Yeah, like, cool. I'm in. And that's, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And he's put more music out since. And, King's Disease 2, and that other one that he put out at Christmas last year. He definitely has more to tell. So it's not, the story is by far not over, but I would love to hear about the come up and see that in like an entertainment fashion.
Yeah. That's a good point. And I'm thinking of actors, since I'm kind of answering my own question here, which is, I think him as a younger, I'm just going on actors that are kind of active right now. So maybe Michael B. Jordan as a younger Nas.
Ooh, yep.
And then as an older Nas, especially if they were to delay it another 5, 6, 7 years or whatever, maybe Denzel Washington.
Oh, man.
As an older Nas, just because, I love him as an actor, right? I don't know if it would really translate, because part of getting the part is actually looking like the individual.
I bet it'd be somebody up and coming we don't know, especially on the younger Nas side.
Yeah, that's true.
That can like pull off his, dialect and his cadence. That'd be dope. I'd love to see that.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, great first one, especially because, like you said, it's going to incorporate other people from that era. So then you really get kind of a '90s themed movie rather than just Nas, like centered around Nas, but really the hip hop scene in the '90s.
I'd love it.
Yeah.
That's Podioslave certified nerdified right there.
Yeah.
Rotten Tomatoes.
Yep.
That's certified nerdified on Podioslave, 100%.
I know. What are the tomatoes going to be? Just like,
we got to figure something out for that.
Yeah, vinyl records.
Yeah, vinyl records, or ticket stubs, or
yeah.
99% ticket stubs on that one.
Is Cardi B, instead of Cardi B, is Lil Nas X going to get a movie first?
Honestly, he might.
Yeah.
Even though he's much younger and still in the kind of the height of his prime right now, he might. Yeah,
just like premature, like, hey, he's trending. Let's just do this one first.
I could see that. That's the world that he grew up in and the world that they live in now. It's you're getting your stories are being told about you when you're 2 albums deep. We're not done yet. You're not even close to done yet.
Yeah. You don't even have a license yet. No, I was kidding.
Yeah.
Man, great first one. I wrote down a few, and one that came to mind immediately is a sad story, but I feel like would make a great movie timeline, because I think a lot of people just don't know what happened behind the scenes, and it's a well-written movie that tells it as it is with Alice in Chains and kind of centered it around Layne Staley. I feel like would be really fantastic, because they're such a prolific band that when Layne died, like, they're still going, but Layne was such a huge part of that band. His voice is huge. It's I've heard people say that it vibrates through the room. I think that's really a pretty accurate description. And so his story is very tragic, right? He's an amazing singer, amazing songwriter, but struggled with substance abuse pretty bad, heroin in particular. And he passed away on April 20th, 2002. And I remember getting that news similar to what our parents probably felt like when they found out John Lennon died, and just being devastated, because I had heard rumors that Alice in Chains was going to tour again at some point. And Jerry Cantrell had just put out a solo record, and it was like almost in preparation for them to get back together and record again. So I was kind of ready for new music, and then that news happened. So when that did happen in 2002, we were in high school. I remember just researching the shit out of the band, and like found out all these cool little tidbits, back then, thinking, man, this would be a really good, the story should be told, It reminded me a lot of like Marshall Mathers, like kind of a broken home, like rough upbringing, and somehow made it to stardom, and just amazing storytelling. So I feel like that movie, similar to what you're saying, Tone, with Nas, like, not only would it incorporate his story, but it would really bring in Pearl Jam, Smashing Pumpkins, Chili Peppers, Nirvana, like all these bands that came up with them, and really be a scene movie, a movie about that time, but centered around Layne Staley and Alice in Chains in that era as well.
That's a good one, and I do like the idea of picking a group from a scene like that, whether it's Nas in New York and hip hop, or Layne Staley and Alice in Chains and the grunge scene of Seattle, which, I mean, we've talked to some people that lived some of that. We talked to Lance Mercer way back, who took the photography for the early Pearl Jam stuff, and I've got a couple photos over my shoulder of his right now.
Yeah.
So it's cool to think about what those stories would be in that context. And these are things I think we're going to... I would not be shocked if we saw a Nas biopic. I would not be shocked if we saw a grunge era biopic, whether it be centered around Alice in Chains and Layne Staley or not. The Alice in Chains story would be interesting on its own because, yeah, Layne had demons. That band obviously had some tragedy, and it would be a sad ending, but they were so damn good when they were active. I mean, they're still active, but with Layne, with that voice, because there was nothing quite like him at that time and today even. I mean, that stuff still resonates to this day for fans of any type of rock music that has come out in the last, 30-something years. So, yeah, no, I'm with you. That would be a badass biopic.
Yeah, there's just so much to tell. It might almost feel like it could be like a HBO series or something, just because there's so much story there, you know? If maybe it's more of a movie of the era, but I feel like centered around something is the only way to really carry a storyline. So they were in the middle of it, but, you know, you think about the big four, it was Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, and Nirvana. So that story has to be told, and I wonder if it's being put on hold because it's so controversial. All the drug use and debauchery, you know, it was a scene. It was what it was. So I wonder if there's hesitation to put out a movie because it was just so lawless back then.
Did you read Everybody Loves Our Town, which is the oral history of the grunge scene?
Yeah, I have the book. I think I've gotten like halfway through it, by Mark Arm, right, from Mudhoney.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a decent amount of the drug use stuff in there, and yeah, I would recommend that book to anybody who likes this era of music, likes the the bands involved, wants to hear about some of their come up, because it starts in the late 80s and kind of gives you how things happened. That would be a good way to make this movie. Not obviously it's an oral history, so it wouldn't be 1 = 1, but it would be very similar to getting all those stories together, and they're all in one spot, which is pretty cool.
That's
Check
a good
that
point.
book out.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, ready for another one?
Yep.
All right, I was thinking Pearl Jam, but we just did the grunge thing, so I won't steal that from you. And then there's still, Pearl Jam's still going, and we've had some documentary type stuff with them too. But I'm thinking maybe, and this would be really cool. And we were gonna talk about these guys tonight when there was gonna be the three of us. But Green Day, a Green Day biopic would be wild because they've had so many different iterations of the band, right? And that is fodder for an episode down the road, which we will do. But yeah, the early days in California, getting into punk shows and being really young, high school age, to blowing up with Dookie and Insomniac and kind of having a crazy kind of drug time at that point too. Around Insomniac, Billy, look at videos of Billy Joe Armstrong around that time, and tell me, he's having a good time. And then into the obviously American Idiot phase of their career. And the different rock opera type world that they lived in, and then to today, where Billy was doing covers of old like pre his time songs during the pandemic online, just covering stuff and they've been around forever. They've been around for 30+ years. So I think a Green Day biopic would be really cool.
No, great one. Yeah, good point. Another 90s OG. So far, we're all 90s, 3 for 3. And I think it really provides us a good opportunity to show that was a very interesting time to come up in music, because these guys came up in the 80s and were kind of paving their own way in the 90s going forward. And the music industry was ripe then, like it was full of money and people are still buying physical product up until like what, 06 maybe? I guess we still are with vinyl. But yeah, that story, man, it really is organic. Starting as a full-on punk band. Like I was listening to the first 2 records, the first 3 actually today, and it's just like you really see their kind of legacy build, like their maturity and like even their, it's almost like they went through puberty in the recording of those records. Like you can like hear his voice change a little bit. Mm-hmm. And just to like see that story in the Bay Area, because I'm so fascinated with the Bay Area because there's so much greatness that came out of that spot. You have Grateful Dead and Metallica and Green Day. Like there's something in the water there. So I think that story needs to be told through one of those bands. I think maybe it's been told through Grateful Dead, but for our era, I think Green Day would really capture that, from like small punk band playing clubs to like headlining Woodstock 99 to now they're like this. They're like literally one of the biggest bands on the planet, you know?
Woodstock 99 or Woodstock 94?
94, yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
because I remember that double CD. I had that double CD as a kid. I think it was it When I Come Around was on there, and yeah, no, that was a cool one. Man, it would be, you say the 90s, but like that is the era that makes sense for a biopic today, because that, you know, sad as it is for us, is 30 plus years ago in some spots. So there has been some time passed, some lived inness with the music. You know, a couple of different generations of people have had it to listen to and be something for them to, you know, be part of the culture with. And it would be cool for that to happen. I think early 2000s you can start to make a case for, but you get into the, you know, middle 2000s and 2010s, they haven't had enough time to make a biopic, I don't think. That's just my 2 cents. But yeah, that's why I think the 90s works, and that's why these guys would work certainly in this aspect.
So here's a question similar to the Now's one. Who's going to play Billy Joe Armstrong?
Oh, man. That would be similar, because there's so much time. You'd have to have a young guy, you know, a high school age kid early, and then have to have you know, the 20s when they blew up, and to today where, you know, they're geezers now. You know what I mean? Like they're old guys for us. You know, it'd be hard.
It's a good point. Although Billy Joe has somewhat kept his youth, and so there's one that's always come to mind. In fact, I remember watching MTV back in the day, and seeing this actor and being like, "Oh, it's not Billy Joe. I could have sworn that was Billy Joe," and it was Giovanni Ribisi, right?
Ribisi. Yeah. He'd be good. That would be good. I could see that.
He's been out of the limelight for a while, but I mean, he looks very close to Billy Joe, especially in the 90s. I mean, 94, almost to a T.
Yeah, and he's been in some good movies too. Go check Boiler Room if you haven't seen Boiler Room. Mm-hmm. And then I remember him in Ted. He was in Ted. Remember?
Really?
Yeah, he was
Wow.
The dad of the kid that wanted to like steal Ted away from Mark Wahlberg. Creepy,
Wow.
kind of like dancing in his living room. Yeah, he's an interesting cat, but he was a good actor. He would definitely pull that off, I think. That's a good call. Then we'd have to find somebody for Mike Dirnt, who I have posited numerous times is kind of the engine behind the music of that band. He
totally
does so much for them. And then Trey, obviously, finding someone to fill in for Trey Cool, to be Trey Cool, would be interesting. That'd be tough.
Yeah, who would be Trey Cool? I mean, I think Mike Dirnt, I hate to give this guy a spotlight, but Putin is pretty close.
He does look like him, yeah.
Trey Cool, I don't know, man. Trey Cool might have to play himself. Might be one of those situations where he's playing himself.
Honestly, that for the later year stuff would be great, but we need somebody with a little bit of off the wallness to him from the 90s era stuff, because that would be funny. I think they'd have fun with that.
Yeah, you're right. You mentioned earlier, like it would be upcoming actors, which is a tough sell. Like it's almost like you think of these movies and you want like legacy actors. Like I was thinking the grunge scene, like with the Alice in Chains thing, like I'd want like Brad Pitt to play like Kurt Cobain, things like that. But like they would just be too old now. It wouldn't work, you know?
Yep.
And Eddie Vedder, like Russell Crowe or something. But it's like, well, that doesn't work now because they're so old. Or I guess now to present, but like the upcoming, like it would be some random.
It'd be hard. Yeah.
Yeah. It'd be a random.
It'd be like De Niro in The Irishman when they make him look younger and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, huh?
Yeah. That was a good one. All right, Nate, what do you got?
All right, another one I thought of recently, and I think this would be it's another 90s OG. Man, I just can't get away from it. Is a movie to really paint the picture for this guy, but also the band and really the scene, because he was a big part of it, is Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails. I feel like would be just an amazing story. His story is so friggin' cool because he really was just like this kid, this child that, you know, wanted to do big things, extremely intelligent, amazing songwriter, amazing artist. I mean, I feel like he would be amazing at anything he did. He's one of those people that's like, he's a full-on prodigy as a child, and as a adult, he's just he's such an inspiration. So I only know a lot about his life because we're geeks here, right? We're nerds. So like I've researched him and watched every interview he's ever been part of and like taken notes and been like, man, this guy is so cool. But I feel like a movie to paint that picture and really go over the whole legacy of his come up to present would be a really fascinating story for many, especially with what he's doing now with soundtracks. And I mean, he's so dialed. I'm surprised that guy doesn't have like a PhD, similar to like Dexter Holland, you know?
Right. Great call. And I'm now jealous that I didn't come up with this one myself. Trent would be awesome. And didn't Pretty Hate Machine come out in 1989?
Mm-hmm.
So he's an 80s OG. He's an 80s OG.
Barely, but yeah.
But he made his hay in the 90s and then early 2000s, obviously, with the stuff that made him, you know, a household name. Is that there's the movie stuff, is the soundtrack stuff, and winning Oscars and being part of massive movies. My question for you would be, who would do the soundtrack? Would it be him and Atticus? Because it would have to be, right? I mean,
it would make the most sense.
Yeah.
Although I feel like he seems pretty humble. I don't know him, obviously, but I feel like he would turn that part down, but then he would probably retract it and be like, it's not good enough. I'm a perfectionist, so
he's also perfectionist. Yeah, exactly.
So I guess I will take it, but it would be like an initial no, and then he would actually go back and redo it.
I would be all about that movie because he's had so many different kind of twists and turns in his career. You know, starting out with kind of the Pretty Hate Machine's a little more dancey is not the right word, but you know, electronic, and then you get the Downward Spiral and Broken, and those are a little more intense as far as the subject matter goes, into The Fragile, which I think you and I both ride for very heavily. We love The Fragile. Yeah. We think it's probably his best work. And then into doing the movies and doing the soundtracks and being this kind of tapped to do so many different things because he's so damn talented. And you're right, listening to him in interviews and listening to him just speak about the things that he's passionate about, it made me want to do something like this because it is an inspiration. Like, the guy is smart, the guy knows music, the guy knows conversation. Like, he's an absolute first ballot somebody we'd love to talk to. So, yeah, great. It would be a great biopic with him, for sure.
It's funny you brought that up, because actually when we first, I think, kind of reeling back to the intro of this episode, which is pitching it like, hey, we should do this, was watching those interviews with Trent and just like his articulation, like, oh man, I love the way this guy speaks, because he's very precise, but he's also detailing some really important information, which I think I try to do. I try to almost like reflect his way of speaking, because it's like, well, yeah, we're geeking out, but there's a way to do it that's, you know, pulling from multiple directions. And he's a full-on rock star, you know. But there's another part of Trent that I really admire, which is it's a huge story of redemption. Like, the guy has been through rehab, huge drug issues, a pretty dark youth, and then to come out the other end, like, he's just that story needs to be told, because there is a way out, you know. Totally. And he's got a family now, and you know, I'm sure he still deals with things, but to really prove that if you work hard and put pen to paper, you can process that shit. So I've always admired him for that reason.
Yeah, and you're right, coming out on the other side of the addiction thing, and so many people from his time frame didn't get through that. So
yeah,
to the fact that he did and went on to do, you know, win Oscars for movie soundtracks and continue to put out good Nine Inch Nails music too. I mean, we both love Nails. Nails has been around a long time and continues to put things out that are interesting to me. Maybe not to the level they were 20 years ago, but damn, still something I want to check out every time something comes out. So that would be a good one. Trent, I'm jealous that you came up with that one before me.
Hey, we're one here on the podcast. So.
True. I'm gonna let you pick, Nate. I got two. We're gonna go behind door A or door B. You tell me and I'll pick.
Oh shit! No like clues or anything.
They're both 90s OGs.
Man, really keeping it old school. Door A.5.
So yeah, we'll go with Tool. I'm gonna pick the boys from Tool. I want to see. Really, the reason I want this is because I want somebody to do the research on why there was all these gaps in between getting music and the stuff that's happened to them that maybe caused those gaps, and you know, get the whole like story, warts and all, if there is some, as to why there's, you know, it is what it is, and how they make their music, and there's music put together by the band members and then Maynard comes in later. How does that all work? I want to know all this stuff, and I think starting with, you know, they put records out in the early 90s that are 30 years old now, to they get to the point where they're, you know, the biggest prog rock band probably ever.
Mm-hmm.
I want to. How does that happen? How do you set out to do that? I want to know these things. So Tool is my third one.
Oh, it's a great one. I mean, it's always a great conversation, right? I mean, it's such a mysterious band. The music's extremely deep. Like, if you don't appreciate music on like a 10 out of 10 level, like it'd probably be hard to get into Tool because I mean, first of all, songs are on average like 8 to 10 minutes long. So you got to have the attention span, let alone the subject matter being just extremely complex. Yeah, god damn it, this would be a really cool story. And then Maynard, I've done some research on him. He was in the military before the band, so he didn't just go straight to music. He was doing other things, and I think everyone in the band was. I think the most interesting thing is the fact that everyone in this band, and I know it's not all original. You have Paul that left, and then you have who came in the fold after that, Justin, right?
Yeah, Justin Chancellor.
They're all just masters of the craft. So I just wonder, like, how do the stars align so much that people just happen to come into the same room? Like, whether it's through a newspaper flyer, like you read stories about bands just starting a band and like just happen to get Danny Carey like out of thin air. Like, really? Like, how does that happen? Or how does Danny Carey land with Maynard and Adam Jones? Like, how does that?
Right.
Is that really luck? Or is it, as we say, like, industry plant? I don't think it is industry plant, but it's just very surprising that they just happen to have a moment where they got the best out of the best and probably the whole country at that time. So this would be a very fascinating story to get it all on paper. Yeah,
it'd be wild to find out how those types of people find each other. And then to have Paul leave and to fill, those shoes with Justin Chancellor. And obviously they didn't miss a beat. They became bigger and more well-known, I think, even after that. Would be just an interesting, how do these things work? And then you're right, into what they're doing today type of stuff, like Maynard with the winery and the, mixed martial arts stuff and being a Rogan, regular Rogan guest, stuff like that. Like, how does all that stuff come about too? And they're interesting folks. We love the music, and we always talk about the music first, but having heard them speak about things too, like, I want to know more. I want to know how Tool, works, peek under the hood, because we don't always get that with those guys.
Yeah, they keep it under wraps, which is part of the mystique, which is lost with Instagram and Twitter and Cameo, all the ways to access people that we used to think were mysterious. But Tool, they've kept it pretty under wraps. The only time I've been close to Danny Carey was when he plays these gigs in LA at the Baked Potato. He plays some small gigs, and you're literally like 2 feet from Danny. And I realized, speaking of this hopeful movie, is I know that he does that to keep his chops up, because he's playing in this small little jazz club, and then he plays these ginormous arenas, and he's so tight because he's in these jazz clubs and in preparation for those big gigs, almost as like, I have to if I can nail it in this tiny ass club where people are a foot away from me, I'll be okay on the road, Yeah. Right. So it's almost like this constant training. Like, they're all training. I don't know if Maynard's like doing vocal exercises on the daily, but they're all tight all the time, and it just blows my mind.
Yeah, his voice is underrated. I mean, we've talked about that too. He could sing.
Oh my God, I think he's textbook for anyone that is in a band that wants to hold notes and write music from the heart. Really, really study lyrics, and this would be a really fantastic movie. Does Maynard have a dictionary and an encyclopedia on both sides of the table at all times? I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. Those guys would definitely would make a good biopic. So yeah, Tool. That was my last one.
Mm-hmm. That would be a 4-hour movie, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, it'd be a 4-hour movie with a bunch of solos.
Yeah.
All right, man. What do you got?
A 4-part movie, 10 years apart. All right, I'm going to break the sequence here out of 90s and late 80s into 90s, which is one that came to mind early on and stewed on for a little bit, but I think we can all agree this one needs to happen, which is the Holy, very much in parallel to Tool, which is actually someone that they admire, is Led Zeppelin. This band, anyone that loves music at least knows the name, but I think anyone that loves music understands and has been a fan of their music because it's such a huge part of everything that came after it. A lot of people say, are you Rolling Stones or are you Beatles? Well, Led Zeppelin's not part of that equation. I don't really understand why, because they're as big, if not bigger, than both those bands combined. And the story is just really, really cool because it came out in such an interesting time, late 60s, broke up in the 80s with the passing of John Bonham, and just made just front to back records, like on every record. Like, I don't even know how that's possible. I know that's the Beatles did it, but I think Rolling Stones came close. But I think the only other band that I can think of on the tip of my tongue, other than the Beatles, that wrote record after record after record that were all just masterpieces, is Led Zeppelin. And they just changed the whole aura of rock and roll. You know, I mean, this is controversial, but I think they are almost as rock and roll, if not more, than the Beatles. Mm-hmm. So to hear this story and just, I don't know, it would just be such a cool story to see them. And the only other time I've seen them in a movie is Almost Famous, where they have like a little tiny clip of like the guy running in the hotel, you know, getting autographs or something from Led Zeppelin. But this story would be really cool to see.
Yeah, I agree. There is a biopic that came out last fall at the Venice Film Festival. It has not reached the United States yet, so I don't know much about it. It's called Becoming Led Zeppelin. I don't know what it deals with or any of that, so there is something, but we'd like... Obviously, this is more than likely. I think that's a foreign film, and it has not made its way to America. We're talking more in like the Almost Famous vein, where it's something that's, wide distribution, big, similar to the Freddie Mercury movie or the Elton John one. Something like that would be. This band would be A1 for me too. I think there's so much there. There's so many twists and turns that band had, losing their drummer too late, and now just to have a story told about because they're an interesting musical band too. I mean, they started with kind of bluesy covers and kind of camping off of the blues scene, and then obviously that worked for them. But then they've got some funky stuff in the back half of their catalog too. Just go listen to Presence. Presence is a funky album. There's some cool stuff on there, but they would be a great one for this. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. No, good point. Just to hear the backstories on anything from On the Tiles to like No Quarter, like they're just so different sides of the spectrum. To get scenes in a movie of those writing sessions similar to Bohemian Rhapsody, like how the song came together. It was like an idea, it was a lick. Someone brought it to someone else. They're like, hey, I think that actually might be worth trying out. And to build a song, I think that's the biggest part, we're trying to highlight here is we want to see it be told, but it's one thing to get an interview, but it's another thing to actually have almost like a visual representation of a flashback of that actual moment, because there was only so many people that were in that room. It was basically the band, maybe their management, and definitely like maybe the producer. That's about it. Other than that, like it's the walls. Right.
Especially back then, where there's way less, the camera work and any of that stuff going around compared to this stuff. We all have one in our pocket. So
I know. Imagine if John Bonham had a smartphone back then.
Right. Shit. Yeah. He'd have thrown it out a window, but yeah.
Yeah.
Good call. That would have been a really good one. All right. So hopefully we did, Tuan, we did you justice not having you on here tonight, but we're excited to have some stuff come out here in the near future that is really, we've been working on behind the scenes that we're close to being able to give you a little more of. So stay tuned on that. We may have hinted at it earlier. And we're back next week with more nerdery as always. And hit us on the socials at Podioslave, on pretty much everything, Twitter, Instagram, anything that you can find Podioslave, it's going to be there. Go to our YouTube page, go to our Facebook page, Facebook's Podioslave Podcast. And we're back at it next week.
Back at it next week, every week since the pandemic. The pandemic is still going, so we're going to still go. If the pandemic goes away, we'll still be here. Yeah, it's been a ride, man. And like you said, a lot of cool things behind the scenes and stuff we would have never imagined, but good to know that we actually made this happen, because now all those things are starting to kind of fall into place, to the point where you mentioned earlier that Jonah is something we recorded a month ago, and we're just putting it out now. So there's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes, and I'm happy to say that it's moving in the right direction. So it's all good and well here at the Podioslave Podcast.
Hell yeah. All right. That's it for tonight. Peace, podheads.
Cheers, nerds.